That's good enough for Marilka. That's my name. Marilka. Like milk. What's your name?
Geralt.
Like Geralt. Nice.
You see, most well-made stories have 6 foundations. The topic we're going to be referring to today, duration, refers to the compression of unimportant or irrelevant events within a story. This technique is universally prevalent in all forms of storytelling, but today we're going to be looking at a few examples within television. Television shows, having a limited amount of runtime, show some great examples of duration. Later in the video, we will also be going over a few movies and how the use of duration might have been less effective than previous examples. Let's get started, shall we? Okay, spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen The Witcher, I highly recommend watching it right now. Just go watch it on Netflix and then come back and watch this video. With that being said, the introduction to The Witcher is awesome. I know I go over introductions like crazy in videos like this, but I'm just trying to hammer how absolutely important they are in captivating an audience. Books, movies, TVs, YouTube videos, it all applies. Now, after staring at this deer for a while, the first thing we see is this guy. Long, luxurious white hair, cool looking sword, fighting a giant monster. Awesome. From the video intro, we know this man to be Geralt, and to fellow Witcher fans, we know this man to be an absolute beast and a legend. But to the majority of the audience of the show, they have no clue to this man, his upbringing, or even his identity. But does that even really matter? A scene like this is going to be cool no matter how much we know about Geralt, his Witcher training, or his past. If the writers did take a different direction with introducing the main character, and instead wanted to give us a direct explanation to everything and why he's here, that would be what we call exposition. Now, don't get me wrong, exposition can be effective and beneficial to a story, and is used everywhere in one way or another, but bad exposition can feel unnatural to a story, and when it takes the audience out of your immersive world is when it gets really bad. We can see an example of this in Disney's Big Hero 6, as I'll show now.
Oh, what would Mom and Dad say?
I don't know. They're gone. They died when I was 3, remember?
Although this is an important fact for the show and something the audience needed for plot reasons, the fact that we directly found out by Hiro telling his own brother when their parents died, like Tadashi would have forgotten at one point, felt very unnatural and was not the best way to give the audience that information. Now that we have examples of leaving out basic information in The Witcher and adding information in a hurtful way in Big Hero 6, let's look at a show that's all about just having fun and creating a great story without explaining even the basics of how the show functions. Yes, I'm talking about Phineas and Ferb. Allow me to explain. If we just take a second to look at the premise of Phineas and Ferb, we can quickly realize that none of it really makes a lot of sense. The fact that the boys are able to contract huge projects as 10-year-olds, the fact that they get away with it without being caught, the fact that an evil scientist tries to take over the tri-state area every day only to be stopped by a secret organization who utilizes cute animals as their agents. But at the end of the day, the 20-minute episode never goes over the contract process Phineas and Ferb go through or the long-term effects of Dr. Doofenshmirtz's inventions on his local city. It doesn't need to. It's okay if we, the audience, don't know every single detail as to why or how, and everything that built up to this point doesn't always matter in the story. Our last concept that ties in with this idea is what's known as a narrative ellipsis. An ellipsis is like the narrative part of a scene change. It is implied that something in the story took place, but not showing it for the sake of brevity. An example of this is in the Witcher Netflix series, where, right after the fight we watched a second ago, Geralt spies our old friend the deer, now wounded from the fight. After a sword slash and a cut, we later see Geralt mentions that he was not hungry after being offered a meal at the tavern.
I'm full. Venison.
One could argue that an ellipsis also happens between the end and beginning of each episode in Phineas and Ferb, with things seemingly going back to their default state every new episode. This is also known as the reset button technique. All of this sounds really simple, and it is, but little things like this really matter when trying to keep your audience compelled and immersed without boring them or directly telling them what's going on. That's the main point of duration. Okay, let's break it down one more time. Duration, in short, is the compression of unimportant or irrelevant events within a story. Exposition is how a story gives background information through the narrative rather than showing it outright. And finally, ellipses is the omitted, implied events within a story. Okay, I hope the breakdown of duration made some sense to you, and if you're able to apply it to your future story writing endeavors, that's even better. I know all the shows I talked about today are really popular, but if you haven't seen them yet, I personally recommend it, including Big Hero 6. I hope next time you go and watch or write a fantasy or unrealistic show that you know it's okay to not have everything explained to your audience. You're okay. We're smart. Just leave us some breadcrumbs and we'll put together the pieces. That's the reason why we're invested in the first place, after all. Well, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much and have a good one.